Hello friends, I hope you are well. Here is your weekly slice of science, and this week we're talking about this study, postnatal exercise, and specifically whether being physically active after having a baby is actually safe, whether it affects your health, your baby's health, breastfeeding, injury risk, or recovery. Because despite what the internet loves to tell you, our postpartum bodies aren't as fragile as we may have been led to believe. And this is pretty solid science that backs that up. So this is a 2024 systematic review and meta-analysis published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine. Now, a systematic review sits at the top of the evidence hierarchy. It is a paper that has pulled data from dozens of studies, and it looked at real outcomes that people do actually worry about. So it's a pretty good study. The authors asked, what impact does postpartum physical activity have on cardiometabolic health, breastfeeding outcomes, injury risk, and infant growth and development? So let's have a look at what they found. One of the clearest findings from this review is that postpartum physical activity does improve cardiometabolic health. So that includes improved insulin sensitivity, better blood lipid profiles, improved cardiovascular fitness, and healthier blood pressure trends. And importantly, these benefits were seen with moderate physical activity, not extreme training programs. This aligns with what we already know from broader science. Movement improves metabolic health regardless of body size, birth mode, or training background. So if you've been told exercise will stress your body too much postpartum, that's not actually supported by evidence. Appropriately dosed movement does support your recovery. One of the questions I get asked most often is the exercise that I'm doing going to reduce my milk supply, change my milk composition, or affect my child? According to this review, no. The authors found no negative effect of postpartum physical activity on breastfeeding duration, breastfeeding exclusivity, milk production, infant growth or development. This was true across different exercise types, including aerobic exercise and resistance training. This supports decades of earlier research showing that exercise does not meaningfully alter breast milk volume or macronutrient content. I don't know where the advice came from that exercise is going to affect breastfeeding or your milk supply, but it is fear-based and not evidence-based care. Another big myth is that postpartum exercise increases injury risk. This review found no increased injury rates associated with postpartum physical activity where exercise was progressed gradually, appropriately dosed, and tailored to the individual. And importantly, injuries were not linked to breastfeeding, mode of birth, or just simply being postpartum. So in other words, you don't get injured because you've had a baby, you get injured when load exceeds current capacity, just like every other human. Because I will say this time and time again, postpartum bodies are not broken, but they are adapting. So as I've said, this review also looked at infant outcomes, which is often missing from postpartum exercise discussions. They found there was no negative impact on infant weight gain, there was no negative impact on growth trajectories, and there was no negative developmental outcomes. Your movement does not harm your baby, so you do not need to choose between your health and well-being and your child's well-being when it comes to exercise. Now, this study is great, but let's be very clear. This paper does not say everyone should exercise in the same way, you must bounce back, or that you should ignore pain, fatigue, or recovery needs. What it is saying is that postpartum physical activity is safe and beneficial when it is individualized. There is no single timeline, exercise list, or magic protocol. But this is perfect because it means that your recovery can look like your recovery, how it should. Everybody is going to be different. Everybody's going to need an individual approach. Postpartum fitness advice is often overly restrictive, fear-based, and focused on protecting you from movement. But this review shows that avoidance isn't protective, appropriate exposure is, because movement supports cardiovascular health, metabolic recovery, mental well-being, and physical confidence. And crucially, it is going to reinforce trust in your body. So the main takeaways from this: you do not need to earn the right to move postpartum. Exercise does not harm breastfeeding or your baby. Movement supports cardiometabolic health. Injury risk is about load management, not whether you've given birth or not. And recovery is about capacity, not perfection. Exercise, however you include it into your life, is about supporting your health for now and the long term.